right, it's time for Free Speech Friday. Fridays, we get together two free-speaking New Zealanders and we talk about the issues or some of the issues of the week. It is a very popular spot. It is brought to you by the Free Speech Union, the FSU, and strangely enough, I think for the first time, the head of the FSU, outgoing as it may be, he's moving on to better things. Jonathan joins us as one of our panellists. Jonathan, lovely to have you with us. Good morning.
Good morning, Sean.
And also someone who, boy, you have all listened to when we talked about child abuse and the great problems of infanticide and inter-family violence in the country. Former CEO of WINS, local body politician, all-round fighter for the truth. Christine Rankin joins us as well. Christine, good to have you here.
Good morning, and it's lovely to be with you.
All right. Let's get into it first. Let's get the kind of sticky one out the way. Worst kept secret in Wellington for months has been that Jevon McSkimming, the former Deputy Police Commissioner, was the high-profile New Zealander charged with a variety of indecency offences or objectionable material offences. He had already resigned from his position, though it's not clear if it was in relation to this. It would seem that the suggestions would suggest it was. This has resulted in all sorts of speculation, browbeating and concern. First up, the allegation in itself, Christine, is deeply disturbing, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely revolting. And I guess it shows you that it can happen anywhere, in any organisation, and there are people out there that you would never, ever suspect who are deeply involved in this.
Well, I just want to stress, Christine, it's alleged at this stage.
Alleged.
Yeah.
Well, alleged, and I'm alleging that the problem is much bigger than we ever know. I think this is great that someone is alleged to have done this. It's coming to the surface. We're talking about who it was and what it might have been. Yeah, I think it's a very big problem, and it's revolting.
Jonathan, one thing people haven't talked about, and I know that restriction and censorship is an issue that the FSU is involved in, and it can be a sticky one. Here's the thing. Why can't you have an internet that doesn't carry stuff in this country?
Look, Christine's comments there are exactly right. This is a massively problem. I think a lot of people would really rather not think about it and not talk about it. But child sexual abuse material has really exploded over the past couple of years. And the Free Speech Union's perspective on this has always been really clear. I don't speak for the FSU now that I've stepped away from the FSU, but while I was CEO there, we worked quite closely, both with a civil organisation that was looking at addressing the harm and actually with the Chief Censor's Office. Child sexual abuse material is not a free speech issue. This is violence. This is absolute degeneration, and it needs to be countered by the government. That's not about suppressing ideas or challenging people with unpopular opinions. I think there's kind of two comments that we have to keep in mind with the Jevon McSkimming case. First of all, I mean, the shocking aspect of this being an individual who is responsible for the very laws that he's breaking. And it kind of just brings to the fore again, are these the people that we want to have responsibility over increasingly vague and subjective tasks? But the second point is, and I think this is the one that really encourages me, you look at the Commissioner's comments that he made following the arrest. New Zealand's rule of law is still functioning. Our police are not above the law. And here, unlike the vast majority of countries around the world, we see the second most senior cop in the country held accountable for his actions. I think we really need to celebrate that and actually draw that culture out. That can give our cops, who I'm sure very surprised by this and to an extent shamed by it. It gives them a sense of going, this is why I serve. We serve to protect Kiwis, to hold up the standards, and that's exactly what we're doing, and we'll do it no matter who you are. Yeah,
okay. Do we have, guys, the technology to just turn this rubbish off or not?
I have certainly no idea.
Christine?
Sorry, carry on, Benjamin, because you know more than I do about this. Obviously, you would think would have, but I don't know.
I mean, I feel like we should be able to say, AI, we don't want any kiddie porn in New Zealand. And AI could
the
do
problem
it.
that you have with that, Sean, the problem with that, I mean, it would be great to have such a simple solution to such a complex issue. Unfortunately, I don't think that is quite the case. That's not by any means, let me be clear, to say that we don't need to challenge it or work very hard to address it. But I don't think AI is going to be the solution here. You'll probably both be familiar with the very famous picture of a naked child that was photographed in Vietnam with napalm in the background.
That's right, yeah.
You know, that was one of the iconic pictures of the Vietnam War. It kind of was associated with the calls, hey, LBJ, how many kids have you killed today type thing. All of this was what led to the real pressure that emerged, admittedly a little bit before my time. Sean, you might remember it. But the pressure that did emerge around...
I'm not an octogenarian, Jonathan. I am 60 years old.
I'm the very old one, the ancient one.
Yeah. But we don't talk about a lady's age, do we? That's bad.
The more substantive point here is that those sorts of pictures have been flagged frequently on social media as child pornography. So context really matters, and I think actually, Sean, as is the case, what we actually need is a cultural response. What the heck is leading our society to think that child pornography or bestiality material is actually something that anyone would wish to indulge in? Isn't that the far more important question?
Yeah, that's a good question, Christine. What is it with porn?
I think you've got to take this a step further, because porn is just part of this picture. If they're interested in that porn, they are interested in the act. And that is what we've got really concerned about with our children. And Sean, you and I have talked before about where this country stands in the world with abuse, etc. And sexual abuse is part of that. We're right up there with the worst countries in the world in terms of sexual abuse. This porn is a step. You cannot tell me that the majority of people that are looking at child porn are not taking some opportunity to play that out. This is not something that remains on a screen, I believe, and we should be very, very, very concerned about that.
Yeah. Look, Christine, it's probably a good segue into another thing I had on the list. And, you know, we have talked about this before. I'm finding it so hard finding ministers who will front on the issues we talked about. Oh. It's bloody amazing. The issue of child abuse and the appalling record we have on an international basis of infanticide and other crimes. And we've had just this week a couple of kids, I think, in hospital with broken bones that can't be explained. And then we have this appalling case of the toddler in the suitcase in the bus up north. I mean, first up, Christine, could you believe that?
I could, and I was horrified by it, despite all that I've seen and experienced. I was horrified by it. That poor child. And if the bus driver hadn't noticed that, what the hell was going to happen next? Could she not afford the child fare? I mean, there must have been more to it than that. But this is just a symptom, another example of the mass damage that's been every single day. Yeah.
And we don't know, Jonathan, the full background to this. But I just go back and think 30 years ago, that would have been on the front of the front page of every paper in the country. It's almost a side bloody bar story now. But it is so bizarre and it's so abusive, isn't it?
Without a doubt. I mean, to be honest, I have children the age of the child that was involved, and I didn't really want to get drawn in on the subject because I don't know how rationally I can comment on it. It is the sort of thing that actually makes me feel physically sick, and I think we need to be careful with the way we seek to discuss it, because otherwise we do run the risk of just normalising this as the shocking society. Let's retain the level of commentary that says we will act, each one of us, to make sure that this does not happen in our communities. And I think that has to be the response that we see. I know phenomenal groups that are working within the communities to say, not us, this is not how we're going to do it. And I think it has to be the only response. I feel enormous sympathy in many for a mother who somehow finds that an acceptable to take. What is going on in her mind? What has happened in her life?
Not a lot. Not a lot going on in her mind.
No. I don't think you can say that, Sean. A mother's instinct is one of the most powerful things in the world, and for a mother to do this, something very, very serious has happened.
Christine, you want to weigh in here? Away you go.
What a lot of nonsense. I want to swear when I hear that rubbish. Every single person can make the change, no matter what's happened in their lives. And the community does not stand up for abused children. We do not personally take responsibility and say this is never going to happen in my street and my community, because it's bloody frightening. When you see some appalling human being doing this, you've got to be incredibly brave to front it. But that mother has no excuse. She is an adult. She can think for herself, and I don't care what she's been through. No child deserves that. I do not excuse her in any way. I'm disgusted by her. There is absolutely no need, because that's what the court does every time. And I'm surprised at you, Jonathan, who fight for people's rights in so many ways, and yet you would excuse her because of what might have happened in her life. That's what judges do all the time, and that's why our children are murdered. But this means a lot to me. And I cannot believe anyone would excuse. They're not animals, because animals care about their babies. They nurture them and love them and get them ready to go out into the world. I don't know how to describe women and men like that. They are beyond. They need to be locked up for a very period of time and never let near another child. But we're soft and pathetic, and we make excuses. So I'm sorry for the passion about it, but I cannot accept that. I can't.
Passion is a wonderful thing, Christine. We need more of it, and I think your first comment around courage is exactly what I've said is the most absent virtue in our society. However, I do think that this is exactly the concern I have around this conversation: is we allow that passion to overcome the reflection that comes in there. And I don't think you actually listened to the comment that I made there, or certainly your response to it didn't seem to reflect that, and that by no means whatsoever should this woman be excused from her actions. She is responsible as an adult, and more importantly, as an adult who has the duty to the children that she has born. However, it is a worthless comment to make unless we are to look at where she has, what has broken her, and that is not to excuse her or remove responsibility, but if only, if locking her up and moving on worked, I would say let's do it. This is the sort of drum banging policy that actually doesn't work, and I agree that we need as a society to do more, but we do not take personal responsibility. I take personal responsibility, and I certainly take personal responsibility in my community, and that's what we need every Kiwi to do. And I agree, it's not enough, but we do have phenomenal organisations in this country, and they need to be supported more.
I want to intervene there. I want to thank you both first, and we'll continue it. I've got an equal number of texts saying Christine's on the money and Jonathan is on the money. Let's continue the conversation between the two of you. Christine.
Look, I've seen what happens when these families are exposed, and everybody moves in around them, and we spend maybe $1 million on a family, surrounding them by every bit of support, and we talk to them, and we counsel them, and we coach them, and you know what happens? They go and do it again the minute you've turned your back. And it's, it is not. People think these one-off attacks. They are not. They are day-to-day torture for a lot of children in New Zealand. I often look at a house and I'll think when I drive past it, horrible things are happening in that house. And, you can look at it and say, what can we do to change the person? Almost nothing by the stage.
The stage that it happens, I hear that. Which was Bill English's plan, that you identify the risk, you intervene, but that wasn't culturally appropriate. Guys, and then we have to go to a break. There's a report that the child is being cared for by Tamariki and the family. I've got to say, my immediate response to that is, poor Christine, do you think the child is going to be getting care and protection?
Well, it's really hard to say. Sometimes it's an anomaly in a family, but usually it's not. It's generations of systemic abuse and all kinds of issues that sit around it. I've seen it over and over and over. And we've also seen all the children in Oranga Tamariki's care that they are actually forced by some of our stupid laws to put them back with their family, and then they just get abused by some. So
confident, Jonathan,
I
that
worry.
this child will be safe in the future.
Oh, Sean, if only. I mean, God have mercy. I wish it were the case. Unfortunately, I think all three of us are mature and experienced enough to know that that is a very unlikely scenario, and that is utterly tragic. Christine, you're absolutely right that the laws that we have, and more importantly than the values that we've incorporated in the way we view how to respond to threats like this in our society, in my opinion, is actually just consistently making things worse. And that's why year on year, decade on decade now, we continue to have decreasing, worsening results. And we still think doing the same thing is somehow going to make it better. I worked under Bill English when he was Prime Minister, and I think the social investment policies that he looked to implement stand to be one of the most significant shifts that we can invest in, because we have to get in earlier. But none of us are well served by forgetting the humanity of our worst enemies, of the people that are most deplorable in our society, and that never means don't hold them accountable. That never means excuse their actions, but it also never means forget that they are coming at this incredibly broken. And I agree with Christine. I don't know if these people are fixable, but I'm worried about the impact it has in my heart and in who I am when I start to view these people in less human ways.
Okay. All right. Look, thank you for a very good discussion there. We're going to have a break, a couple of other things to carry off. You're with Free Speech Fridays, brought to you by the Free Speech Union, the champions of free speech in New Zealand. You can visit them at fsu.nz.
Well, I better head off to bed. Coming?
Better not snore.
Boy, okay, good session. And our guests this morning are Christine Rankin and Jonathan Ayling. We think we've solved the feedback problem that we're having.
Oh, I hope so.
Okay, we hope we have. Look, I want to talk about an issue that I thought was just a local issue and no one would be interested in, but for some reason, people all over the country have told me I'm wrong about a safety fence on Wellington's waterfront. And it's been voted down by the council. The idea that you put up a fence at the edge of a public sort of walkway or wharf where people could fall into the water and drown. Actually, that's a no-brainer to me, but I'm being told I'm wrong. Jonathan Ayling, where are you at on this?
Look, if Wellington Council, I mean, of all places, Wellington can agree on this, I would say there's fairly strong arguments to oppose it. And I haven't lived in Wellington for a while. I lived there for quite a number of years. It does seem to be a strange city at the moment, in my opinion, but it does have a beautiful waterfront. I think that the costs that were put is one argument against it. The fact that there weren't other ways to address it is probably another, and I'm pleased to see that they haven't gone ahead with this. I think if those on the left and those on the right of this particular council could agree, I would say we've probably landed in the right spot.
Now, Christine Rankin, I know in the old days, if you'd fallen off the wharf in Wellington with those earrings, you're straight to the bottom, baby, and you ain't coming back up.
Yes, but I have personal responsibility, Sean, and I would be very careful going near the edge. And if I had children that were there, I'd have personal responsibility. But look, I think it's bigger than that. It was unbelievable. I don't know how the hell they got to, was it 7 million to do that fence? And I think part of the issue was there was no consultation. And, you know, I'm not a similar process here with the big thing, no consultation. People are fighting for no consultation.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important. So I absolutely agree with Jonathan. The fact that almost the National Council can agree on this means there are major fishhooks in it. And there's got to be other ways to fence that without it costing $7 million.
Dave has just sent me a text, actually, which convinces me I was wrong. Sean, drunks can climb fences. I'm speaking from personal experience.
Well, I think that's a really important place. And I feel very deeply for Mr. Culkin who lost his son, but the context of this death also needs to be remembered. And again, that doesn't remove their tragedy, but it does remove the reality of whether there is a pressing danger for otherwise reasonable citizens or whether people are acting irresponsibly. And I think Christine's point is exactly right. We need more local government officials to stand up and say, where there are pressing dangers for responsible citizens, of course, as a society, we respond to that. But it is not my job to remove danger from your life because you're immature or irresponsible.
All right. Okay. Look, the final thing I want to talk about, and this again a story I didn't know that people would be interested in, but my God, they have been. The Hobson's Pledge billboard campaign that used an image, a stock photo image of a woman with a moku, an elderly Māori woman, in the context of a political ad about Māori wards. The woman says the first she knew was when people started ringing her saying her picture was up on the billboard. She happened to be a Māori Party supporter. She went on TV crying and acting up for the cameras, and Hobson's Pledge the ad. The company that chose, that made the billboard for them is owned by Jordan Williams of the Taxpayers Union. They bought the image off a online that sells images. They thought they were within their rights. What a mess. What a mess, Jonathan. And you would have done billboard campaigns in the past.
That's right. It is a real mess. I think there's kind of two comments I want to make on this, almost one on both sides. I really feel for this woman, Alan. I can only imagine every one of us kind of holds strong opinions on particular subjects, and if my face was elevated across the country depicting a position that I fundamentally oppose, I would be angry about that. I don't think I'd go on the television crying about it, but I'm in the public eye. I can imagine if a woman who has never been on television or radio before in her 70s now is having to answer for this. This is a pretty upsetting event, and I think we have to give that to her. I would also say Hobson's to have respond to it as constructively as they can, but this is a bit of a cock-up. All that being said, from a free speech perspective, I do wonder whether this is going to be the Straussen effect. And, I mean, here we are today talking about it.
About the campaign against Maori. That's right.
Maori wards wouldn't have been on the subject otherwise, I don't think. You've got to wonder if all news is good news. I do think someone has made a big mistake here, and I hope that Hobson's Pledge will insist that they take responsibility for that, because I do think that someone has actually been harmed through this in a way that they didn't do. But I also hope we don't miss the important conversation that needs to happen around Maori wards. Christine,
okay, and we won't. But Christine, what's your feeling on the whole billboard thing?
I agree with Jonathan, absolutely. It's a hell of a mess, and I keep thinking I can't imagine it, but if I appeared on a billboard for the Green Party, for example.
Yeah, well, actually, that was the comparison I was going to make. Christine Rankin says, go solar, or that would be hilarious.
Oh, my God. I tell you what, I'd be pretty upset. So I understand why this woman who has completely different feelings and would never align herself to Hobson's Pledge is suddenly a billboard queen. But it's worked for Hobson's Pledge. I don't think they planned it. I think it was a mess and a mistake. But it's worked because everyone's talking about the core issue. So what more can you say?
Quickly, guys, is there anything else that has exercised your minds this week, Jonathan?
I think we've covered a lot already this morning, Sean.
Good on you. Christine, anything else that struck out in the news for you this week that you want to have a rant on?
Not so much on the news, but our election campaign is turning very ugly here, and I've never seen that before, and I wonder if that's happening across the country.
Wellington, can I tell you, Wellington local body mayoral election is a cesspit, is an absolute cesspit.
Well, there you go. Little old New Zealand's coming alive in the most horrible way in terms of taupo, I must say. But
okay, they go high, you go low, Chris. You go low. They go low, you go high. Oh, I got that right
well,
eventually.
for once, I'm not the topic of this. Other people are. Thank God, not me. But you know, not very nice. It's hideous.
Well, good on you for running, Christine. My wife's a local councillor as well, and I think local government is a really easy place to ignore, to neglect, and just complain about from time to time. But actually, some important decisions are made there. Our national inflation questions are being really impacted by rates, and we need good people like you to keep going. So, bravo.
Thank you.
All right, guys, thank you both. That was a great session and good, robust and passionate discussion. That's what we're all about. Thank you very much for your time. Christine Rankin, Jonathan Ayling,
guys.
our panellists on Free Speech Fridays, brought to you by the Free Speech Union, the champions of free speech in New Zealand.